Hello guys, and welcome to today's video. Right guys, today's video is a video tutorial looking at extra practice with Edexcel Gcse Maths Linear, fractional and negative indices. So it's practicing more indices in today's video, and this is the PDF guys, if you're wanting to have a go at the sheet. So what I'm going to do is put this in the description, so feel free to download it here and obviously check this video out. This video was recorded on Sunday the 29th of August 2021, and it's aimed at GCSE 9 to 1 maths for all examples for AQA and OCR, as well as A-level maths as well, AS level maths and A2 level maths. Right guys, so question number 1 says find the value of 36 to the power of a half. Now power of a half means square root, so it's a square root of 36. The square root of 36, guys, is 6, because 6 times 6, or 6 squared, is 36, Part II, 3 to the negative 2. Well, the minus power is the reciprocal, so it's the inverse. So it's 1 over 3 squared, which is 1 over 3 times 3, which is 1 over 9. So that is my answer for part I. For question number 2, write down the value of 7 to the power of 0. Well, anything to the power of 0, guys, is always 1. So anything to the power of 0 is always 1. Part B, 4 to the minus 1. Well, the minus 1 makes the reciprocal, so it's the inverse. So it's 1 over 4, which is just 1/4. Because if you imagine it as 4 over 1, so 4 is same as saying 4 over 1. When I invert that, I get 1/4. Question number 3, simplify 2 to the 0. That's just 1. Part B, simplify 5 to the minus 1. Well, that's going to be 1/5. Imagine I've got 5 over 1 and I flip it, so it becomes 1/5. Question number 4a, write down the value of 2 to the negative 1. Well, that's going to be 1/2. Part B, write down the value of 64 to the power of a half. Well, power of a half means square root. So the square root of 64, which is just 8. Question number 5, write down the value of 5 to the 0. Well, anything to the power of 0, guys, is always 1. Part II, 4 to the negative 2, so that's going to be 1 over 4 squared. 4 squared is 4 times 4, so it's 1 over 16. So the answer to 4 to the negative 2 is 1 over 16, guys. Part III, 100 to the power of a half. Well, that's going to be the square root of 100. And the square root of 100, guys, we should know is 10. 10 squared, or 10 to the power of 2, is just 100. Question number 6ai. Write down the value of 9 to the power of 0. Well, anything to the power of 0, guys, like I said, actually, is just 1. Part II, 169 to the power of a half. Well, the square root of 169, is going to be 13. So 13 squared, or 13 times 13, is equal to 169. So therefore, the square root is going backwards. Right, guys, part B, 64 to the 2/3. Now, what I've got to do here is take the cube root of 64, which is 4, because 4 times 4 times 4 is 64, and then I raise it to the power of the numerator. So 4 squared, which is 16. So 2/3 means, so it's the cube root, so that's the root that I take. So that's the root. And then the number on the top, on the numerator, well, that's just a normal power. So it's a normal power. Okay. Question number 7a. Write down the value of 36 to the power of a half. So it's the square root of 36, which we should know to be equal to 6, guys. Okay. So the answer is going to be equal to 6. Part B, okay. Find the value of 8 to the negative 2/3, or the negative flips it, so it's 1 over 8 to the 2/3, which is 1 over the cube root of 8, which is 2, and then I square my answer, so I raise it to the power of the numerator, which in this case is just 2. So raising something to the power of 2 means squaring it, which is 1 over 4. So the negative flips here. Remember that 8 is the same as saying 8 over 1. So when I flip 8, then I get 8 over 1. Okay. 8 over 1. Okay, when I flip it, I get 1 over 8 to the power of positive 2/3. The power of 2/3 means the cube root of my answer and then square it. Okay. Right, guys, question number 8i. Work out 4 to the power of 0, that's just 1. 4 to the negative 2, well, that's 1 over 4 squared, which is 1 over 16, guys. Part I, 16 to the power of 3 halves, well, that's square root of 16, okay, so it's the second root of 16, which is square root, which is 4. And then I'm going to cube my answer. So let's just change colours just so we know. So I'm going to cube my answer. 4 times 4 times 4. Well, 4 times 4 is 16. Times 4 is 64. So the answer to my question is 64, guys. Okay. Question number 9. Guys, 25 to the power of a half. Well, that's the square root of 25. So the square root of 25, guys, is equal to 5. Part B, 9 to the power of 0. Anything to the power of 0, guys, is just 1. Question number 10. AI, 3 to the negative 2 is 1 over 3 squared, which is 1 over 9. Oh, it should be a 9 there, sorry. So 1 over 9. 36 to the power of a half is the square root of 36, which is just 6. 27 to the 2/3. Well, it's the cube root of 27, which is 3. Okay, so 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. And then I'm going to raise it to the power of the numerator, which is just 2. So 3 to the power of 2, or 3 squared, and that's equal to 9. Sorry. Part IV. 16 over 81 actually to the power of negative 3/4. So the minus means I'm going to flip it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this question over here actually. So I've got a bit more space. So 16 over 1 actually to the power of negative 3/4. Okay. So let's just change the pen. Okay. So we've got different colours that we're using. So that minus flips the fraction. So it's going to be, it's probably not an ideal colour actually. So 81 over 16 to the power of 3/4. Okay, so it's going to be the 4th root of this fraction. So the 4th root of 81 over 16. So the 4th root of 81, guys, is a bit actually a bit trickier. Okay, so the 4th root of 81 is actually 3, because 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So 3 to the power of 4 is 81, and the 4th root of 16 is 2, because 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. I'm now going to cube my answer, so I'm going to raise it to the power of 3, because that's the power on the numerator. So I'm going to get 3 cubed over 2 cubed, which is 27 over 8. So my answer is 27 over 8. Okay? So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. Right guys, question number 11, AI, 64 to the power of 0, that's going to be 1. Okay. 64 to the power of a half, well, that's going to be the square root of 64, which is 8. And then part I, 64 to the negative 2/3. So the minus flips it, so I get 1 over 64 to the 2/3, which is the cube root. So 1 over the cube root of 64, which is 1 over 4. And then I'm going to square my answer. So 4 squared is equal to 16. So it's 1 over 16, guys. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so remember that 64 is same as saying 64 over 1. When I flip that, it becomes 1 over 64. Okay. So that's where that part came in there. Okay. Part B, 3 times root 27 equals 3 to the power of n. Find the value of n actually. So this one's a bit more trickier. Now I've got 3 there actually. So I've got 3 to the power of 1 times root 27. Now I can write root 27 actually as 27 to the power of a half. Because something to the power of a half means square root. Okay? So I can write that so far. Now 27 is actually 3 times 3 times 3. So we should recognize that 27 is same as saying 3 to the power of 3 or 3 cubed. So I can now make this. I've got 3 to the power of 1 times 3 cubed to the power of a half. So hopefully you are with me so far. Okay, so simplifying this now, well, 3 times the half is going to be 3 to the 3 over 2. So I'm going to have 3 to the 1 times 3 to the 3 halves. Okay, remember that when I have a power raised to another power, I multiply those powers together. So 3 times a half, we should know that that's equal to 3 halves. Okay, so the final step now, well, I've got 3 to the 1 times 3 to the 3 halves. Well, I'm going to add my powers. So 1 plus 3 over 2 is 5 over 2. So n is equal to 5 halves, or 2.5, or 2.5. Okay, so that is something that I've seen appear on exam before actually. So it's recognizing your powers of 3 and recognizing that the square root can be written as power of a half, and then making sure that you're happy with your rules of indices. Remember that when you multiply with the same base, okay, or base numbers or letters, you add the powers, and then when I've got a power raised to another power, I multiply these together. Okay, so they are your 2 index rules, okay, as well as knowing the division rule for indices. Right, guys, okay, so work out 12a, work out 3 to the 6 here, divided by 3 to 7. Now, this is asking us for like a final answer. It says work out. So when I divide, I'm going to subtract the powers. So I'm going to have 6 minus 7, which is 3 to the power of 13. Okay, so I think that would be our answer. Okay, yeah, part B. I know I said sorry. Yeah, I know I said yeah. Like it's got to be a number here actually, but I think for our purposes we will leave it as a power. But 3 to the 13 would obviously give you a like a numerical value, which I don't know what it is, because our calculator doesn't do that many decimal places, if that makes sense. So the answer would be 3 to the 13. Okay, so when you divide, you would subtract the powers. Part B, write down the value of 36 to the power of a half. So that's a square root of 36, which is equal to 6. Okay, part C, 3 to the power of n is 1/9. Work out the value of n. Well, 3 squared, okay, is 3 times 3, which is 9. But we want 1/9. So if we make that a -2, okay, that will give us 1/9, because it will give us 1/3 squared, which is 1/9, if that makes sense. Because 3 to the -2, okay, is 1/3 squared, which is 1/9. Or 1/9, sorry. Okay. Question number 13. AI, so 3x squared y cubed, so it's 3x squared times 3x squared y times 3x squared y. Okay, so multiplying each term separately, so multiplying the numbers together first. So 3 times 3 times 3 is going to be 27. So I'm going to have 27, and then I've got x squared times x squared times x squared. Well, I'm going to add the powers, so I get x to the 6. Y times y times y is y cubed. So that would be my final answer, guys. Okay, part II, 2t to the -3 to the -2. Okay, so let's deal with like each part separately. So I'm going to have 2 to the -2. So 2 to the -2 is 1/2 squared, which is 1/4, or a quarter. And then I'm going to have t to the -3 to the raised to the -2. Well, that's actually going to give me t to the -3 times 2, which is going to be t to the 6. So I'm going to have a quarter times t to the 6. So the answer is going to be t to the power of 6 all over 4. Because I've got a quarter times t to the 6. So t to the 6 came from. So when I've got this rule here, guys, when I have a power raised to like another power, I multiply the indices together. So -3 times -2 is +6. Okay, so that is where that +6 has come from. So a quarter times t to the 6 is just t to the 6 over 4, or a quarter t to the power of 6. Okay. Right, guys, question number 14. X equals 2 to the power of p, y equals 2 to the q. Express in terms of x and or y, 2 to the power of p plus q. Well, that's the same as saying 2 to the p times 2 to the q. Because when I multiply, I would add the indices. So it's going to be 2 to the p plus q. So it's going to be x times y, which is equal to xy or yx. Okay, because 2 to the p is equal to x and 2 to the q equals y. So the answer is going to be xy or yx. Okay, either way is fine for that question. Okay, next one. 2 to the 2q. Okay, 2 to the 2q. So I can rewrite that as 2 to the q, okay, all squared. Okay, because when I have a power to like another power, well, q times 2 is just 2q. Okay, so we're going to have y to the power of 2, so it's going to be y squared. Okay, part II, 2 to the p minus 1. Well, I'm going to have 2 to the p, okay, times 2 to the minus 1. Okay, 2 to the p equals x. 2 to the minus 1 is going to be a half. So it's going to be a half x, or x over 2. Okay, so I'm going to put a half x there, or x over 2. Okay, a half x, or x over 2. Okay, right, okay, and here, so xy equals 32 and 2xy squared equals 32. Find the value of p and q. Okay, right, okay, so let's label this as equation 1 and equation 2. So we're going to have, okay, so let's do this as equation 1, guys, and this is equation 2. And let's do equation 2, okay, divided by equation 1 and see what we get. So 2xy squared divided by xy is equal to 32 divided by 32. That's going to cancel with that. Y squared over y is going to be just 2y. So 2y is equal to 1. That implies that y is equal to a half. If y equals a half, that means x has to be equal to 64, because 64 times a half is 32. Okay, so we're going to have that x equals, so that's going to be equal to 2 to the p. So that's equal to 2 to the p, and that's equal to 2 to the q. Well, that's going to be, so q is going to be negative 1, because 2 to the negative 1 is going to be a half. And for x, well, 2 to the power of 6 is 64. Okay, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32, and then times 2 again is 64. So 2 to the power of 6 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 64. Okay, so that is my answer for that one. Okay, so once I worked out what a y was a half. Remember that xy means x times y. So a half x equals 32 gave me that x was equal to 64. Okay, so that's where I got that part from. So a half x is 32. Timesing both sides by 2 got me that x was equal to 64. Right, guys, okay, question number 16. Write down the value of 8 to the power of a third. So that is going to be the cube root of 8. Okay, so the cube root of 8, which is 2. Part B, 8 root 8 can be written as in the form 8 to the k. Work out the value of 8 to the k. Well, I've got 8 to the power of 1 times the square root of 8, which can be written as 8 to the power of a half. Okay, remember that square root is power of a half. Okay, adding the powers, I get that k equals 3 halves. Okay, 1 plus a half is 3 halves. Is 8 to the 3 halves. Okay, and the next one, 8 root 8 can be expressed in the form m root 2, where m is a positive integer. Express 8 root 8 in the form of m root 2. Now this is where I've got to simplify surds. So root 8 is what I call a surd, guys. So a surd is what I call an unsimplified radical. Okay, and what that means is, so it's just a square root of a number that isn't a whole number answer, if that makes sense. So like root 2 is a surd, root 3 is a surd, root 5 is a surd, root 7 is a surd, root 10 is a surd, root 11 is a surd. Okay, and this is all because the answers that they give in the calculators, they are not whole numbers, so they go on forever essentially. Okay, root 8 can be written as root 4 times 2, which is equal to root 4 times root 2. And I've chosen this specifically because root 4 gives me a whole number answer. So I've got 2 times root 2, which is just 2 root 2. Okay, and then I'm going to times 8 by it. So I'm going to bring the 8 forward. So I'm going to have 8 times 2 root 2. Okay, so the 8's from there, if that makes sense. So the 8's from the end, okay, which is going to be 16 root 2. So the value of m would be 16. Right, guys, part D. Rationalize the denominator 1 over 8 root 8. Give your answer in the form root 2 over p, where p is a positive integer. Okay, so rationalizing Surds. So what I'm going to do first of all, guys, is I'm going to rewrite the bottom as 16 root 2. Okay, so rather than write that from the previous part, we know that root 8 simplifies to 16 root 2. Okay, now when I rationalize, guys, what I'm going to do is multiply it so I don't get a surd on the bottom. So I'm essentially going to multiply this by 1, so which is the same as saying root 2 over 2. Okay, and it is going to become clear in a second why I've times it by that. Okay, because on the denominator, we will no longer have a surd on the bottom. Okay, it doesn't matter if we have a surd on the top, but the whole point of rationalizing the denominator means that we don't want a surd on the bottom of our fraction anymore. So on the bottom of the fraction, on the denominator, all we want is just a whole number on the bottom. Okay, it doesn't matter what is on the top of my fraction. Okay, so hopefully you're with me so far. 1 times root 2 is root 2. And 16 root 2 times root 2. Well, root 2 times root 2, guys, is root 4, which is going to be just 2. So 16 times 2, which is equal to root 2 over 32. Okay, and that can't be simplified any further. Okay, so don't think about thinking, well, I've got a 2 that I can start cancelling. That's not the same as saying 1 over 16, okay, or like root 1 over 16. Yeah, so that can't be simplified any further. Okay, if that makes sense. So that would be my answer for part D. Okay, so that's looking at rationalizing surds. Okay, so it's multiplying it by what we call a conjugate. Okay, so multiplying it by a root on the top and bottom to get rid of the denominator surd on the bottom. Okay, hence why it's called rationalizing the denominator. So we don't want any surds on the denominator of our fraction. Remember that this is what I call the denominator. Okay, and that's what I call my numerator. For the numerator, it doesn't matter if I've got a surd, okay, but that is it for the answer, guys. Okay, so I hope that made sense. So that is the end of the lesson for today, guys. Okay, so thank you so much for tuning in and watching the video. Okay, hopefully you are happy with those questions. Any queries, any questions, then put it in the comment section. I'll be happy to address it. Okay. And lastly, guys, so I know a lot of you are anxious here or feeling a bit worried about the start of the academic year. Okay, new year, September 2021. My number one golden advice is to stay on top of your work, guys, yeah, and make sure that you're focusing when you're in school. So make sure that you're completing your homework and your classwork to the best of your ability, and make sure that you are studying hard, guys, okay? Make sure that you are being consistent throughout the academic year, okay? That's the key part. So make sure that you are doing the work actually and keeping on top of it, okay? Don't worry about like what's going to happen in May or June next year. Let's just focus on getting through this month first, then next month, and then the month after. Okay, and lastly, I've put here, check out my playlist on Gcse Maths here, Gcse Maths, A-level Maths for more practice. Okay, also check out Corbett Maths, Hegarty Maths, the Gcse Maths Tutor, and TL Maths and to Majid, and also Ginger Mathematician for extra practice on your studies. Okay, but that is it for today, guys. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot of you, yeah, are a bit skittish, yeah, about any worries, yeah, and like future uncertainties. Okay, all I can say is try your best, yeah, to focus on the present and take each day one day at a time and one step at a time. Okay, so please don't worry or like think about May or June next year, because that isn't going to help anybody. Okay, and it is just going to make you feel worse and worse mentally. Okay, so take it like one step at a time, guys. Okay, and on that note, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you find this useful. Drop the video a like. Also press the bell icon, okay, so turn on post notification so you don't miss out on further and regular uploads. Okay, take care, guys. Stay safe, stay healthy. I hope your family and friends are all well and healthy, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.